It's his Volk. Time to enjoy card making with me. This turned out to be a special video, I can say. Today I'm going to show you all possible ways to work with clear blocks. And while I'm showing that, I'm also making 2 inspirational cards. Will you be watching? To begin, I start by cleaning my old clear blocks and my glass work mat. As you can see, they are used a lot and quite well. From my previous cards where I worked with glitter paste, there is still quite a bit of glue and glitter stuck to my plate. Hand sanitizer allows you to clean up very easily. After all, it contains alcohol. But you can also clean with regular pure rubbing alcohol. Usually hand sanitizer is enough. I also like to use baby wipes or microfiber cloths. With this straight clear block I can very easily scrape all the glitter paste off my working plate with the baby cloth wrapped around it. And I can easily throw away the baby cloth afterwards. I only use baby wipes when there's a lot of stubborn dirt on it though. For just ink alone, a little water with a dry cloth is enough. And even then everything is not clean, you can use ordinary pure rubbing alcohol to remove the most stubborn stains from ink and glue and glitter pastes. Ordinary rubbing alcohol I put on a tissue and then I just wipe over it. So this is the same alcohol you use to disinfect objects, like a thermometer or earrings for example. Just keep in mind to ventilate well and open a window for a while, because the alcohol fumes do linger in the air for a while. It all comes off very easily. And while we're cleaning up, I'll take the lid off my stamping platform right away. Because even though you can do so many things with clear blocks, a stamping tool is also very handy to stamp with for certain large stamps and using different techniques. Look what a lot of dirt comes off. Now that everything is nice and clean, I get to work on these new clear blocks from AlinaCraft. This is what the packaging looks like. I really want to show what you can do with clear blocks and why they are essential and not just for stamping. There are as many as 7 clear blocks in the package, all different sizes and with handy ridges on the edges for a good grip. And now you're probably thinking, what do they look weirdly white? That's right, because new blocks still have a protective film around them that you have to remove yourself. I do this with a needle. You see, this is how you pull off the protective film very easily. I suspect this is put on at the factory to cut the acrylic blocks nice and straight without the pieces flying off. Look how nice and shiny and new. On this side are checkered lines. Nice lines for sticking the stamps nice and straight or for measuring things. It is so pleasing when you have bought something new and can open the package and start working with it. I hope to surprise you with this video and use the clear blocks in ways you haven't thought of. I do hope to keep these nice and shiny. See, there are engraved lines on one side of the block. Let me show you the dimensions. This is the biggest one, which is 10 by 10 centimeters. The cubes on the clear blocks are 1 square centimeter in size. This one measures 7.5 centimeters. This one is 5 centimeters in size. This one is 4 centimeters in size. This one is 3 centimeters in size and this one is 2.5 centimeters in size. And this one is 5 centimeters by 15 centimeters. For the cards I'm going to make today, I'm using smooth white watercolor paper in A4 size. I will first cut a card panel out of that. For my first card I will make a slimline card, which is 10.5 centimeters wide. For the first technique I'm going to use the clear block as a stamp. I will use the smooth side of the clear block. And I'm using Distress Oxide ink. You can use any kind of water-based ink for this. In this case I'm using Oxide ink, which is a water-reactive ink. This ink is very cool for this technique. I stamp a little green ink on the clear block. And on the other side of the clear block I stamp the light color. I want to keep the ink pads clean, so I leave a little space between them. Then I start spraying water with a regular spray can. First a little water on the back of the paper. I do this to prevent the paper from bulging too much later on. Now I spray some water on the ink and the clear block. And now I use the clear block as if it were a stamp. I find the center and put the clear block on top. I let the ink soak into the paper for a while before removing the clear block. If necessary, I let the ink bleed out a little more and then I wait for it to dry. And now go for a second layer and I stamp it exactly the other way around. So first ink on the clear block, spray it wet again, and once again I press the stamp on the same spot, but with reverse ink. I only really do this after the previous layer is completely dry. In the time that this dries, we continue with the remaining piece of paper. First I cut 2 strips from it, for the text that I will stamp later. So that will come later. First I'm going to use this piece of paper to apply ink. We are now using the clear block in combination with aqua markers. So they are just markers with water-based ink. We're going to take the smooth side of the clear block again and then just scribble a little bit of ink on the clear block. We spray it again a little bit wet and also the back of the paper. And then I stamp on the paper with it. I like it to have jagged areas with pieces of white in between. You'll see why later. The clear block is easily wiped clean with a damp cloth. In the meantime, I set this aside so it can dry. The next thing you can do with such a nicely shaped clear block is tracing. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll use a regular fine liner for that. With any pen or marker you can do this, of course. It might also be nice if you put the clear block slightly crooked or offset on it. But I like it straight and neat, so I try to put it in the same place. And then I draw a line straight along the clear block. Now it's just nice if you draw some dashes here and there in the line as a break, or as camouflage for when you have slipped somewhere. What we are going to do now is to use the clear block to make splatters. This can be done with markers or with ink, but of course also with watercolors from pens or tubes. Actually, with anything water-based or liquid you can splatter. This piece of paper is now dry. It looks like a big mess, but just wait and see how cool it becomes later. This was made with the water-based markers. Now I'm using the clear block to apply splatters with the same markers. You just scribble a little ink on the clear block, though on the smooth side, and then spray a little wet with water. Then you need a brush. It doesn't matter at all which brush. I often use this old one. A water brush also works very well. It makes a difference how high or how low you hold the clear block off the paper. And it also makes a difference which brush you use. Bigger brushes make bigger splatters. For the second color I scribble and wet the ink again. So you sweep the brush along the edge of the clear block and look, you already get a nice splatter effect that way. It will be a bloody mess though. If you don't feel like that, you can also splatter in a cardboard box, of course. Because while I am showing how to use the clear blocks, I am also making a card right away. I make some extra green stained paper. So I dab some oxide ink on the clear block, spray it wet and dab it on the watercolor paper. Keep in mind to always let the ink dry, or dry with a heat tool before going over it with a new layer of ink. Then I now have these two pieces of paper. Time to start stamping. Well, so that's what clear blocks are actually for, to stamp with. I'm going to use these beautiful flower stamps from AlinaCraft. They come with matching dies. Extra nice when the shapes are die cut. There are a lot of stamps in different sizes, which is why it's so handy to have several clear blocks. You can do multiple stamps on blocks without having to clean and change the stamps all the time. What I often do myself with small stamps that I stamp multiple times on a piece of paper is to use both sides of the clear block and then alternate. Very handy. For the cards I have in mind, I'm going to use this flower. It looks like an anemone to me. I'm going to use the small leaves as well. For these stamps, it doesn't matter where on the block I stick them. The best is in the middle. The clear stamps stick to the clear block by themselves. Even if you have used them and cleaned them, they stick. Just wipe with a cloth with water or under the tap and you can keep using them. In between, I want to take a moment to show why the long clear block is also so handy. I have these beautiful stamps here from AlinaCraft. That one contains all the individual strips. Look, I'll take this one as an example. Because there are lines on the clear block, you can stick the stamp on exactly straight. It's very easy to stick the stamp crooked, and sometimes that can be nice too, of course. But those lines on the clear block make it really handy to align the stamp straight. This is a bit confusing at the moment because my work mat also has lines, but I think you can see it quite well. Now, when you start stamping such a stamp like this, if you wiggle too much, the print may not be nice. And when that bothers you, I advise you to stick an additional other stamp above and below it, even if you don't stamp then. I'm going to show you. I like to use VersaFine ink lately. This ink stamps very sharply and is usually right the first time. But you can also stamp very nicely with Memento ink or archival ink or hybrid inks. I've now inked the stamp I want to print. Then I stick a stamp I don't use above and below it. Those I don't stamp but are on there for stability. You see, I have the inked stamp in the middle and the rounded stamps that are not inked for stability. When I press the stamp onto the paper, I manage not to rock back and forth, which makes the print more beautiful and crisp. So try not to wiggle. Also, because the lines are on the clear block, I can easily see if I'm stamping nice and straight on the paper. On the strips I cut, we will stamp a nice text. By putting the stamp on the strip first, you can see if it fits. Then place the stamp on the clear block. By looking at the lines on the clear block, you can see if you are stamping straight. Any excess strip can be cut off later. And if you look closely, you can correct the stamp if it is stuck crooked. The best way to ink the stamp is to press the ink pad on the stamp and not too hard. I align the stamp to the lines on the clear block. I keep the clear block straight and try not to rock back and forth. Then I let the ink soak into the paper very briefly. When stamping with water-based ink, it is definitely recommended to let the stamp sit a little longer. Very handy and quick like this. Now we are going to get on with stamping the flowers. So handy, all these different sizes of clear blocks. What you want is a stamp impression that is not completely colored in. So you try to stamp on a spot that has 2 shades of color and still has a small portion of white. I like it this way. I also stamp some leaves this way. Clear blocks are so handy because they are transparent. You can always see through them to stamp again on the same spot if you made a mistake. I've never been a fan of rubber stamps. I could never see where my stamp landed on the paper. Keep in mind to stamp the flowers and leaves a little bit apart from each other, so you still have room for die cutting later. To clean the stamps, I usually stamp them a few more times on a scrap paper first, and then wipe clean on a microfiber cloth that I spray with water beforehand. Using baby wipes is not my preference for this, because you will leave small fibers on the stamps, which will give you unsightly lines the next time you stamp. It is best to stamp with your ink pad on your stamp rather than with your stamp on the ink pad. You then have less tendency to push hard. And pushing hard is not wise, as it will give you ugly, oily, irregular stamp lines, especially with a more spongy ink pad. Look what a beautiful effect it gives to stamp the flowers on this spotty pattern. And so easy. You have to color and depth, and you don't even have to color for it. I'm going to stamp some leaves on the card base. You can lay the stamp flat first and then push the block onto it, which is actually the easiest. Then the stamp sits nicely evenly on the clear block with no air bubbles underneath. Sometimes I also lay the clear stamps down on the paper first to make a composition, or I use the sheet they are kept on to see how it fits. Then you already get an idea of how it will look. In this case I try to stamp some leaves randomly, yet evenly spread out. This stamp set comes with all matching dies for each stamp. You can also cut out the flowers and leaves by hand, but die cut it looks so much nicer. The dies are easy to break loose, and the connecting pieces are very easy to break loose with grip pliers. I cut the flowers and leaves first, otherwise they won't fit through my mini die cutting machine. It takes some searching which flower belongs to which die, but it is quite easy to put the dies down correctly. With a piece of tape they stay nicely in place. There are a total of 19 dies. I advise you to write that number on the back of the package to make sure it is complete when you put it away again. Cutting is just as easy, but I like the relief of the die cuts. And I am so glad I bought this sidekick. Very easy for small dies. And now I can also film it for you. So if you are thinking about buying something on Amazon or AliExpress, click one of my links first so I get a small commission on it. It won't cost you anything extra and helps me to earn some money with this time-spending hobby. Next, I want to splatter some ink using watercolor in dark grey metallic color. The paint always needs some activation with water. And I need a big puddle on the clear block to splatter later, so I add a lot of water and ink. As a test, I try it out on my other piece of paper first, so I don't mess up my work if I don't seem to like the color or size of the droplets after all. I make drops that are a little too big for my liking. I dab the big drops that I dislike up with a tissue, and where it doesn't quite go away, I later cover it with a die cut or jam. I also splash some on the flowers and leaves. Somehow there always seems to be more splatters next to where you want them than on where you want them, eh? What you can also use the clear blocks for is to tear off tape. Now I use AlinaCraft tape, which is very sturdy and therefore harder to tear off, which is why I personally prefer to just use scissors for her tape, but it works. See, this is what you do. You put the clear block where you actually want to cut and then you tear off the tape. Especially with the thinner white tape, it's very handy to use your clear blocks for this. Also very nice for when you find it hard to handle the sticky tape and may find it difficult to cut the tape close to the edge of the paper. By using your clear block as a tear-off edge, you can cut as close to the edge as you like. Let's glue the card panel to the card now. Using a tool that has a right angle makes this easiest. And then we start assembling the card. I mark off how long I want the text strip to be. I cut the strip shorter, and cutting with my guillotine always makes sharp and straight cuttings. Then I put a line in the middle. With a small pointed scissors I cut 2 snips from the corner to the center, and then we have a banner. I add foam blocks to the flowers and text, but leave the protective tape on for a while so I can put together a good composition. When everything is about where I want it, I take off the parts with the foam blocks and glue on the low laying parts. And that's where the clear blocks come in very handy again. The clear block is very handy for pressing on the glue, so that the die sticks well while I'm working on the rest. Another clear block tip, but for this one I still like to use my old straight blocks for. To stick the text on nice and straight and prevent it from going crooked, I put my clear block along the edge of the paper, and this way I can put the text strip along the clear block and stick it perfectly straight. Ideal, right? Just add the flower and some silver gems and this card is done. Then I will make another card, because I got in the mood for it. This time a square card of 13.5 centimeters. And for that I first cut a card panel from watercolor paper, which is also 13.5 centimeters in size. With any kind of water-based ink I could stamp on this now with my clear block, just as I have already done in the other card. This one would fit nicely on the center or this one, but I plan to use this block 4 times. For that we first want to know what the center is. With dashes I mark off where the center is, and I connect them again with lines, so there will be a nice cross in the center. Again I stamp ink on the clear block, spray it wet and stamp again until I like it. These guidelines make it easier to find the right place to stamp the blocks. I use all ink that is on my block. Therefore some squares I stamp multiple times. When all ink on the block is used, I then wipe the clear block dry again and stamp on it with new ink that I spray wet. I don't want my ink pad to get dirty or wet. Then I now use a smaller size and stamp it on top. Only when the bottom layer is dry though. Too much ink I let drip off the clear block, or I dab off with a tissue. Nice and messy. The guidelines can be carefully erased. My paper has become quite bubbly because of all the water. Now you can leave this overnight under something heavy, but I don't have time or patience for that right now, so I'm going to grab some heavier tools. My glass plate can take some heat, so I can just iron the paper flat with the iron. I do have it on a low temperature and the steam setting off, of course. Well, look, almost completely straight, right? Have you ever done this like this before? On this card I'm going to stick some loose flowers and the text with some extra leaves. From the sheet I have left I can stamp and die cut plenty of extra flowers. To be honest, here I forget to trace the clear blocks with black lines. But I do put black stamped leaves around the flowers in the background. Note that I also use the clear block again to press the glued dies in place. The size of the sentiment I mark out and cut the size in the shape of a banner. And the strip I stick on with foam blocks. Oops, now I forget to take out my clear block again. If you look closely you can see that it's a tiny bit crooked. Since I think these flowers look like anemones and want to make the flower even more beautiful, I decide to color the center of the flower deep dark grey. Instead of coloring, I put dots, so that it does not become a plain smooth hole, but keeps a little bit of texture. And so this card is also finished. Same kind of card, yet very different. And now I regret that I forgot to draw the lines around the clear block on this card. Although the dark grey center of the flower and the colored gems I added make it very nice. For making the envelopes I also have a tip, And also a good way to use your clear block when you don't have a glass mat. Your clear block is of course not heat resistant and not glass but acrylic, but that big block still comes in very handy. Normally, if you are going to ink blend and want to avoid putting big blobs of ink on your paper, you want to wipe it off first. If you were to put this directly on paper, you would have an ugly smudge. But to avoid that, you can wipe the ink off on your clear block first, before blending it on your paper. And the same ink you can then pick up again to continue blending with. More economical to use than if you were to keep wiping it off on residual paper. I'm going to do the same with a darker shade of green. First, I wipe the blending brush clean on a scrap piece of paper before dipping it back into the new ink pad. This way you can also use the clear block well to blend two colors of ink together before smearing it on the paper. One advantage is also that your table stays pretty clean, and even in my case my glass mat. On the white part of the envelope I stamp a flower with a few sprigs, nicely matching the card. I touch up ugly spots or missing stripes with a fine liner. For the other envelope I do it the other way around. There I first make a composition of stamps and then I place the large clear block on top of it all at once. This clean one is too small, you can never have enough clear blocks. This way I stamp all the figures at once. This is also handy when I would like to make several of the same envelopes with the same composition of stamps each time. And with a fine liner I fix failed stamp impressions and extend the branches a little bit. The stain on the envelope I could fortunately erase, and before I continue with ink blending I dry the stamp impression with the heap tool. On this card I blend the ink around the flower. This gives me opportunity to put some extra ink on the ugly spot. I make the leaves dark green. Without using the masking technique, just roughly where the leaves are. Since there is enough ink left on my clear block and the stain is still slightly visible, I spray water on the clear block and use the rest of the ink to splatter. Again, testing first. I want a little more dark with it, then you can see them better. A little bit of water for small splatters. And it goes pretty well that way. Well, here are the two envelopes. I think they turned out quite nice. Here I put splashes on them and here I didn't. The stain is almost invisible in this way. And here the stamp impression is a little bit blacker and more prominent because I stamped after blending. Then here you see the first card I made, where we used the clear block to stamp the background green and to draw a line with the fine liner. We used the technique of stamping with aqua marker ink for the flowers and used the clear block to stick the sentiment straight on. We splattered, used the clear block to press the parts when gluing and also to tear off the pieces of double-sided tape. And also used them to clean the work surface. Then we have this square card. On that we stamped two sizes of squares as a background. The cards share the same banner sentiment strip. This card has no black traced lines and no silver splatters. But it has dark colored hearts in the flowers with some colored gems added to it. And some extra silver gems on the petals of the leaves to pimp up the card a bit. I'm going to show you a spoiler now. I use the clear blocks as an elevation to put my cards and envelopes on before taking photographs. Do you ever take pictures of your cards? I always use pretty paper as a background and want my card to stand out on that. Laying the card down a little higher creates a shadow, which makes the photo more beautiful. And that's how you take nicer photos. See what a difference? Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. I'm very curious what you thought of this video And also I'm curious if you know more ways to use your clear blocks. If you are interested in any of the products I used for making these cards, you can find all the links for them in the description below this video. Just expand the text under the video by clicking the word more and you will find them. Also in the description box you will find links to my other social media accounts to see lots of pictures of cards I made. If you are watching this video through AlinaCraft's channel, please also subscribe to my own channel Sisvolk. I hope you learned new things and are inspired to create new cards using new techniques. Have a nice day and I will see you next time. Bye bye!